Hey guys, what is up and welcome to a new Tesla update video. So today, as per usual, let's go over the market. Let's go over what in the hell just happened today. Absolutely wild day. It just feels like we're witnessing history several times over the past, honestly, week or so, right? So yeah, let's go over it. Let's talk about what happened and what we can expect moving into the rest of the week. Don't forget, it's exciting, but let's keep emotions calm, right? When we were crashing, I was trying my best to keep emotions calm, stable, unbiased, etc. Same thing here. Now we're rocketing, and it's important not to get some crazy FOMO, because tomorrow we have CPI, PPI Friday, so the market's not done yet. And I'll go over the market as well and give you my opinion. But nonetheless, yeah, jumping into it, Tesla closing the day up an absolutely astronomical almost 23. Let's just give the 23 to it, right? 23% on the day, closing at 270.214. Just yesterday we closed at 222 and we're at 270. Guys, it's up almost $50. That's unbelievable. So what does this mean moving forward on Tesla stock? And obviously compared to the market, Tesla actually kind of going in line with the market. QQQ is up 12%. That is just some godly numbers. But nonetheless, right, what does this actually mean moving forward? That's the question, right? Okay, what's next? I mean, crazy day, but is the market saved this bull market back, or is this a bull trap, or maybe it's neither, or whatever. I'll give you my thoughts. So let's go over and let's zoom out. I want to start this video out a little bit more on the zoomed out approach, right? Like what's actually happening with Tesla. Let's take a look at a little bit more of a zoomed out approach. So the way I look at Tesla is pretty simple, right? For the most part, despite the volatility, honestly, the last even week, including today, including yesterday, etc., we're still kind of within the same range, right? We haven't actually, Tesla's been holding up phenomenally, right? It absolutely has, because as everything, tanked, and then it kind of had that small bounce with the bear flag and then continued tanking, most things, are down here. Tesla is still up here. So Tesla's been holding phenomenally, but that also means that it's still essentially just contained within this range. It hasn't left this range at all, despite the insane volatility we've had in the market, right? So it's very interesting. But so that's something to note, right? So for instance, again, Tesla, this bottom range of about, we'll say 220, 222 to like as low as this, 215, that we'll say $5-ish dollar range hasn't snapped. It held here, it held here, it held here. On the flip side, we have this kind of 285 to 290. Got rejected here, got rejected here, got rejected, oops, here, we're still contained within that. So the way I look at Tesla in a more zoomed out approach, right, in terms of just like where can it be the next, several weeks, even potentially months, probably weeks, those two levels are still crucial. So if Tesla somehow ends up being, let's say this is a massive bull trap and Tesla then like crashes back down, everything just tumbles and Tesla drops down below, let's say 220 to 215, that is obviously where I believe that the next level down, which, like I said before, and I'll still say, happens, and we pretty much go down to under 200 to as low as, in my opinion, about 180, or 180 to 200, which is going to be kind of this like zone of demand right around here. You can see, right? This little area of demand right here, roughly, is where I would expect Tesla to go. That's assuming we, of course, lose it. I'm not saying it's going there now. That's only if we, of course, snap this level that here has held here many, many times over, right? Again, 215 to about 220, we'll say, roughly, give or take. On the flip side, though, right, Tesla, if it pretty much gets above and especially closes a daily candle, or maybe even a 1 hour candle, honestly, even like a 1 hour candle, honestly, above 290. 290 is honestly the number, like 285 to 290, but 290 is like that, the sweet number. Like that's where we really want to happen. Then Tesla can rocket, in my opinion, to about 350. I think 350 is not out of the cards. Obviously, it's gonna. I personally think this is going to be a small bull trap here. I actually think there's a chance that we continue going sideways. And I think that the breakout above 290 is going to coincide with this red trend line over here, right? And this red trend line is, like, if it happens to say tomorrow or something like that, it'll be pretty much at 300. But if we kind of go sideways a little bit more, the sense of being a bull trap, we come back down, let's say to 260 or 250, and we kind of go more sideways action. And then we break out somewhere over here when it lines up at about 290, which will be somewhere in about, middle of this month, in about a week, another week, maybe of sideways action, but in about a week, right? That 290 will line up almost perfectly with this trend line, and that will be a double massive breakout on Tesla stock. And I think if this happens, I'd be shocked if we don't see at least 350, potentially, which will be this kind of pivot point up here, or this kind of demand zone right here, right? Or a supply zone, I should even say, arguably, quite the opposite. Or even as high as this area up here, right? Very close to each other. This is actually even higher. This is actually closer to 360 to 370, right? You could even see as high as that, right? So those are the main levels I've been looking at. Somewhere in this range will be for Tesla. If it pretty much more or less gets above about $290 per share, which again, maybe it'll happen right away. Maybe the market just rockets from here. I don't know, right? Nobody knows how fast it'll happen. But what I am confident in is that if it does happen, or more specifically, when it actually happens, again, about 290. But again, if it happens too quickly, you have to understand this trend line is still intact. Like if we just rocket from here and break 290, that's still really, really good. But this trend line, like if it happens to say even tomorrow or the day after that, it's about 300, right? So then we still need to break $300 per share, unfortunately. So that's why it's, it could be a little bit more tricky in that sense, which is why I like it if you kind of get a small rejection, get, some sideways action, and then break out when it lines up perfectly. That would be like perfect. Like that'd be perfection. Like you couldn't ask for anything better than that. So let's see how that plays out. But that's something else to consider, of course, moving forward. So again, the point I'm just trying to make here is the fact that Tesla, it's still not out of the woods. There's still work to be done. There's still levels to break. There's still resistances to snap. And if we go to the weekly, same idea, right? The weekly is kind of the same purpose here. So this area right here, right? This area that rejected us many times before, we ended up snapping back under. And these last 2 weeks, it got rejected at the exact same level that we got rejected here, 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 arguably even here for a little bit. And now we're back to it again. This is another reason why this, area that we're pretty much in right now, this kind of 270 to as high as about 290, very large area of supply resistance, right? Needs to break. Like it's very, very, very important that this needs to break. I actually think it will, but I don't know if it'll be right now, because technically speaking, while we're still within this, while we still have not broken, technically speaking, there could still be a very large rejection, massive bull trap, potentially even making fresh lows back down to like, let's say 180, 190, and then it breaks. Like that is still, that like, you can't fully, even on this pump, that's still not something that, in my opinion, you can fully ignore. I don't think it's going to happen personally. I'm not actually betting on that whatsoever. I don't think it's going to happen. But I'm also not completely oblivious to the fact of that potentially occurring, such as, yeah, I'm going to go all in calls right here, expiring in a month. And hey, if you do that, congratulations, because if this actually does play out this scenario, you're pretty cooked, right? You're done. Congratulations, you played yourself. That's kind of the idea as to why I bring that up, which is why I personally just only hold shares. I actually don't play calls. I only sell options. I don't buy options. Because again, I don't want to time it. I don't know how long it'll take. It could happen right now. Yeah, maybe if it happens right now, and congratulations, your calls are substantially up. Maybe you go sideways for a bit, then your calls are gonna, kind of water away. Or maybe we actually do make this little play, right? You don't know for sure, but what I do know for a lot of confidence is when that 290 to 300, we'll say, depending on when it happens, but we'll say 290 for now, break does happen, should be a very nice pump to, in my opinion, about the mid 300s. That's my current expectation, personally speaking. So let's see how that plays out. Moving over to the 1 hour, we have some very wild action after hours. You can see if I go over here to the 1 hour chart, a lot of price action in the after hours, just kind of slingshotting up and down. I mean, after a market day like this, actually I'm pretty high volume too. Not surprising after a market day like this, but yeah, so going to the 1 hour chart, right? What is the 1 hour chart? Most people know, if you follow me, 1 hour chart is one of my favorite time frames because you can get so much information from the 1 hour chart, right? You absolutely can. Actually, sorry, before I go to the 1 hour chart, I want to talk about one final thing. And the reason why I do still overall lean more bullish, right? Regardless of what happens here, regardless, even if Tesla comes down to, this under 200 level, like I'm still bullish. Why? Because the mean reversion on the weekly has yet to occur. Remember when we were up here and I talked about many times over how buying up here is risky? Like, yeah, I know everyone's talking about this potential bull flag and, it might play out, but in my opinion, it's pretty risky. Why? Because we were so far away from the mean reversion on the weekly time frame, right? I don't like to see that. I don't like to see when the stock is this far away on the weekly. It could go higher. It could have went higher. Obviously, nothing is guaranteed, of course, but the risk reward is not there. It's not there. Again, and I said this many times, even like for the past several weeks, while we're just, zigzagging within this kind of range over here, guys, the mean reversion now is all the way up here. Technically, Tesla would have to go up to pretty much those mid 300s for just a mean reversion, right? Just a weekly mean reversion. That's it. Nothing more, nothing less. And again, these things take time. For instance, one more thing I want to talk about here is when we had this massive rocket ship and we were like, if you were like to eliminate all these candles and you were only looking at like these two candles up here, look how far we were away, right? But you have to understand, even when we were this far away up here, we didn't just instantly go back down to it. We had, even after the topping candle, we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 candles essentially, of essentially 6 weeks, I should say, more specifically, after topping of sideways action before we even reverted to the mean. So you can make an argument, the fact that this candle up here, the one that actually topped us, what if that's this candle right here? So that would imply that there could be 6 weekly candles in a row before we get a true mean reversion. What does that look like here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 week 4. So what if I'm right? What if we do get a little bit more sideways action, maybe for 1 more week, maybe even 2 more weeks, and we also get those 6 weekly candles here before we get that breakout above 290 and we get that mean reversion to about the mid 300s. Just, food for thought, food for thought. Just keep that in mind. That's kind of what I'm expecting. I do expect it to happen though. I do expect us to make our way to 350 roughly, of course, at some point or another. I just, it's hard to say if it'll be starting tomorrow, next week, or even the week after. But what I am personally pretty confident in is that it will happen, but I'm not obviously in calls because there is still technically an option that we get a very quick snap down like this and then we make our way back up. That's not completely out of the woodworks just yet either. So just again, it's important to take all these things into consideration, especially in a market like this, in my opinion. The 1 hour chart, like I said, one of my favorites, right? And I was sharing with my members, which also on the daily, I was sharing with my members that we were setting up a medium strength bullish divergence where the stock made equal lows, RSI higher lows. I'm a big divergence person. I like divergences. They're very powerful if used correctly. We were setting up a bullish divergence on the RSI, right? Very nice bullish divergence. I even said this with you guys yesterday, where the stock here, as you can see, technically made a lower low. And I use the word lower low in candle closure sense. Like I said yesterday, RSI only cares about candle closure, right? So this candle, pretty much yesterday's close, closed lower than any of these candles did back here. So in other words, it did technically make a lower low on candle closure, which is what the RSI actually cares about. So it did print, as you can see yourself here, a bullish divergence. And look what happened, right? Look at this absolute beauty. Now, obviously, it doesn't usually play out like this, to this perfection. I'm not saying it's always this good and we get this kind of pump, but the point is the fact that what it usually suggests is the fact that you're probably closer to a bottom than not. Overall, which is why I like to sell options. When I see these kind of things, I sell options, and even if I'm wrong and it does go a little bit lower, I'm still most likely good. Worst case scenario, I'll buy this, massive discount. I'm happy with that, no problem. So anyways, so that's good. But the 1 hour, we blasted through many resistances. We blasted through this kind of 240 resistance. We blasted through the 250 resistance, which is good. And we are starting to stop and find some resistance now as we enter that 270 to 290-ish massive area of supply. So my personal expectations right now, the pump is pretty strong, right? I wouldn't be surprised if we get a small rejection here and maybe make our way up a little bit higher, even to the 280s, kind of like what we did right over here, right? Same idea, right? Wouldn't be surprised if we get something like that, or we just essentially get a straight rejection from here. But one of those two is what I expect. So either our side gets overbought and then we make our way back down, or we do this kind of double pump and then we make a nice bearish divergence and then we make our way back down and continue that next week or potentially 2 weeks of continued sideways consolidation until we get that 290 breakout. That's my current expectation. I expect one of these two scenarios to play out personally. Obviously, if we just happen to break 290 right away, it's a different story entirely. This is all under the assumption that 290 remains intact. I think that's pretty much the majority of what I wanted to cover. I guess the final thing to say is the fact that mean reversion, like we talked about on the weekly and the daily, which Tesla has reverted to the mean on the daily as well. The 1 hour chart, despite any of the massive drops like this, what does it usually always do? It reverts back to the mean. Massive pump. What does it usually do? Reverts back to the mean. In this case, it followed us to the price, but nonetheless, it stalled enough to revert to the mean. Same idea here, right? I want to see, before I get very confident for, longing the stock even higher, right? I want to see at the very least this either come up to us, we come up to it, or down to it, or we meet in the middle. I don't care which one it is. At the very least, I want to see that happen, while also looking to see if we get any potential divergences on the 1 hour time frame. But yeah, if we do get a rejection, the next major level to look out for, in my opinion, first one will be 260, followed by 250. Pretty nice, simple numbers. But yeah, that's kind of the main thing I want to talk about. And I did promise I'll go over the market very quickly, so I do want to go over the market very quickly. I'll go over QQQ. It's a little cleaner, but QQQ, perfect reversion to the mean on the daily chart. Look at this, absolute perfection. We were so far away from it that it's like I'm like shocked people were this bearish down here. We were 11% under, crazy. You don't see that very often. Perfect reversion to the mean on QQQ, but not out of the woods just yet. We're still getting potentially some rejection here, and we're still at this potential trend line resistance, as you can see right over here as well, right? So these need to break and these need to snap, and essentially the Qs need to at the very least break the low 270s, in my opinion, bare minimum for this to, in my opinion, actually turn into a potential bull market once again. Again, that's the bare minimum. But yeah, so that's kind of my thoughts. Let me know what you think down below, and I'll see you tomorrow.